factors that actually drive something. And all the other pieces, racism and hate, are just ancillary. Ignorance is the number one thing that drove that. And the fact that he was available. It was, and these guys were criminals. The thing that I always say to folks is that these guys were such criminals that a white jury had no problem sentencing them to death.
That's true.
And like I said, I asked people to go back into history and find the circumstances in which a white Southern jury sentenced white men to death for killing a black man. I challenge you to find that. I challenge you to find it over a 100-year history. And in Jasper County, they sent 2 of the 3 to death. And 1 is supposed to be executed on September 1.
That's right.
What's interesting is that, and this tells you also something, the 3rd one, they sentenced him to life without parole. And you know why?
Why?
Because he was a local boy who had gone wrong, and they had led him to that. He needs to go to prison for the rest of his life for what he did. But he was somebody's son.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
right.
The other guys were outsiders from somewhere else. So the local piece of that. I also think a big factor that drives, I think what drives East Texas are 2 factors.
What are they?
Weather and the economy. Hurricane, you know, when you ask the question about what do you see today, Hurricane Rita had much more devastating impact on East Texas by a factor of 100 than James Byrd.
It's true.
And what it revealed is the fact that both black and white, regardless of your race, this area was on the precipice economically.
At that time.
This area has been devastated by the global economy. This area is never diversified from its base, which was natural resources, timber. Low paying, low skilled jobs. And what's happened when you also asked me, when you asked in your questions about what's the difference today, today it's the economy.
Still the economy.
Well, the fact of the matter is that if you look at the 2010 census for East Texas, the population has fallen.
Yes.
I was just up in San Augustine, which is a county that in 2000 was 65% African American, which you can translate that into political power. Unfortunately, though, the majority of those folks are most likely between 55 and 70.
In a retirement community?
No, poor.
Poor.
Not retirement,
They
poor.
don't have any options.
They're in the woods. And because, and here's the other part, in this place, wealth, you asked about wealth. How is wealth defined in East Texas? Land.
Oh, okay. Versus money in the bank.
Land. The wealthiest people in this community have thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of land.
Who are some of those names, some of the family names?
You're
one of them.
Well, no, but they're very private people, so yeah, that's not ever going to come out of me. But the fact of the matter is that if you have lots of land, you have generational wealth, because it takes 20 years to grow a pine tree, and you cut it and you sell it. And then basically generation to generation. So families have been here for over 100 years, have gone through 3 or 4 generations of land where they have basically fed their families, educated them. Many of them pushed them out of here into great achievement. I learned that My dad taught me that. And so that's been one of the things that we've done. We learned that from the community of people. But the problem with being so natural resource driven is that it doesn't cause you, that you're dependent upon that, and it doesn't require skilled labor, and so wages are very low. And so this area has suffered, you know, if you read Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns, it talks about the migrations of the 1920s and 30s and 40s, which, you know, coincides with the school movement that I talked about, and talks about the movement north to Chicago, west to California. Well, there's a huge migration going on right now.
To where? Different places or?
Urban. It's rural to urban. It's out of the woods and into communities like Jasper, and from Jasper to Houston. And what's happening is that people don't have a plan. And without a plan, taxes don't get paid on your land, land gets seized, you sell it off for not enough money, and then you go and you get a job in Houston that now doesn't require, you know, now you're part of the global economy where they can do it cheaper in the Caribbean and in Brazil. So all of a sudden now people are trapped. And if you look at the 2010 census, you'll see an out-migration of African Americans out of East Texas woods and into cities.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed there were more Hispanics, but fewer
And more
African
Hispanics, 140-something% increase in Hispanics moving into the area, which is a natural migration based on populations. But if you look at African Americans, and even in a microcosm, and people looking at it micro, you can notice that there's a migration of people out of the woods and into towns like Jasper, and then from Jasper into cities.
Oh, okay. So there's just gradual step.
And that's an economic migration. Without a plan, that's not a step up. And as a result, this area is depopulating. So what does that mean?
Yes.
It means that the census, the electoral census is going to change. As older people vanish, disappear, die off, the young people aren't here. We're having now what is a suburbanization of East Texas. And so a new group of people will show up here.
And they'll be from the smaller towns that are smaller than Jasper.
Right.
Okay.
So it is an interesting, you know, it is the economy. And it was basically accelerated by Hurricane Rita. Instantly, schools got smaller. And the people who had the least reserves, had the least money, were basically moved out of here. If you remember, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and the migrations, and it never returned.
Never returned.
Same thing happens here.
Because they went to Houston and Waco, and
Right.
some of them stayed.
Yes. So I think that that's one of the things that's going to happen here, and it will reorder. More Hispanics will move into these communities. Land will get bought. Will be a new economic model will take over in terms of how to make the land profitable and work for you, which is something that we're working on with our ranch. Relationships will form, and so yes. So
life will go on.
Life will go on. Yes.
It's kind of hard to say if it's better or if it's worse.
You know, obviously, if you have, I'll tell you how it's worse for me. I have a cousin who did a fantastic job of mapping our historic cemetery. You know, and one of your questions was the taking down of the fence. Well, and erasing those lines. Except if you have a historic cemetery here, and it's the white cemetery,